I also thought, since I got the old block of wood out, I'll show you guys the proper way to install a lag bolt. Okay, whenever you're working with a lag bolt that's greater than 1/4 inch thick in your material, what happens when you drive this fastener straight in without drilling a pilot hole, when it starts to contract and contract and retract, pressure is going to be put on. That's what causes the wood to split. So if you put this in there, it may not split now, but it's probably going to split down the road, mostly on a really nice hot day when the wood dries out. Mostly if you're doing exterior and decking projects. So, and you don't want this wood to split, because if it splits, well, it's going to fail and fall apart. But I'm also going to show you a couple other things that are going to help you protect it from rotting prematurely. But the first thing that you want to do is get a drill bit that is 1/4 to 1/3 the diameter of your lag bolt. You're going to drill a pilot hole. Make sure in the chuck there. Okay, now I got my pilot hole. That was user error. Forgot to tighten it down, but okay. And if you're doing outside stuff, anything outdoors, if you're got deck sealant, put deck sealant in that hole. Put some deck sealant, just mount it in there and coat your bit. Because even though this is like galvanized, it's still going to react with the wood, and it's still going to react with the water. It's not going to really help you much of anything. What you want to do is you want to seal that wood, because now, like, the outside's treated, but you saw that wood that comes out, this isn't treated. The inside of that wood's not treated, because the treating doesn't go all the way through. It's just on the outside, little layer on the outside. So you're going to get your deck sealer in there, or some vegetable oil. I don't have any vegetable oil, so I'm going to pretend I'm using some vegetable oil here. I'm going to put a little bit in that hole. Okay. Then you're going to grab your washer. Once I find, oh, there it is, there's my washer. Then you're going to grab a washer and you're going to put it on. Then you're going to drive your fastener. And now, you notice I drove the fastener till it just starts to break the surface. You don't want it to break the surface all fully. Because if you break the surface, now you got more exposed untreated wood. But not only that, as the wood expands from moisture increasing, it's going to tear down through farther, which is going to make that a lot more weaker, and it's going to rot, and it's going to fail a lot more premature. So there's your right way of doing it. Now, if you want to recess this, you've got to look at the thickness that your engineering calls for. If the material says minimum requirement 3 inches, unless you go 3.5 inches, you cannot recess this fastener. You cannot take this fastener in deeper than what the engineered material thickness is. So if you want to recess these and you're building a deck and the engineer says you got to have a 3-inch beam, but you don't want these sticking out, you're going to have to go to a 3.5-inch beam so you can bore it out and recess it. And before you put a fastener in, when you recess it, treat it. Use your treating or use some oil to seal it off. Then put it in. But when you're doing a fastener, you do not want to drive the thing down too far. You want to drive it so it's just flush. Drive it in too far, that's a fail. That is a total fail. If you start tearing the grain of the wood with the head of the fastener by sinking it in too far, even with nails, your nail gun, you should always set your depth on your gun to sit flush. Because the worst case scenario, you might have to pull out your hammer and give a little tap to make it flush. But you don't want that nail to penetrate through the surface of the wood, because that's a fail. Because when the wood expands, it's going to tear, and it's going to also try to lift that nail up a little bit farther, and it's going to fail prematurely. So a little bit of tips for you guys there. But that's how you install a lag bolt properly. Don't just take your drill and drive her in there and send it home and say, we're good and done. Because that joint's going to crack, that joint's going to rot, that joint's going to fill up with water and moisture. It's going to fail. And never penetrate the surface of the wood unless you want to recess it. And like I said, if you want to recess it, always have to add a 1/2 inch to your material that you're working on above what the engineer requires. Because if you don't, now your fastener is not sitting through the full 3 inches of material that are required. A little bit of tips from a professional for you guys. Catch y'all on the flip side.